This year I attended the Sculptures by the Sea exhibition. As someone who doesn't truly understand modern art, this was an interesting subject to cover. So in this video, I'll be showing you some of the sculptures that I saw while I was there. First we have a piece called Structural Wave. The artist's message in this piece was to convey mankind's impact on the earth. This was one piece that I could fully understand the meaning of whilst I was at the exhibition. Next, following the same nature theme, is a piece called Tidal. Made of Corten steel, Tidal, in the artist's words, looks to celebrate the body and its relationship to nature and movement. At first I was a little confused by this piece, but after reading about it, it has become one of my favourite pieces from the exhibition. Next is the Boab. The artist's interpretation of the Tree of Life in the Western Australia wet season was never something I really connected with, though I did appreciate the design and time it took to make it. This next piece, The Little Boy and the Whale, intrigued me when I first saw it. It was definitely a good sculpture to take photos of, but like the previous sculpture, this was a piece I didn't exactly connect to after reading its statement. The idea itself was good, a representation of Aboriginal Dreamtime, but in the end the overloaded statement ended up throwing me off. Next is the piece called Mantle. In the artist's words, a form inspired by nature to hover over and protect you. Inspired by the shape of clamshells, this piece was one I rather enjoyed. The sculpture itself was well crafted, and the statement behind it wasn't bogged down by meaningless words that took away from the piece. Next is Before the Dawn. Now this piece was fun to take photos of. The black shining granite piece was something that most people walked by, more intrigued by the bigger sculptures. But the small sculpture actually ended up being one of my favourites at the expedition. The simple statement of the darkest hour is just before the dawn, leaving people to interpret the piece as they wish, as you watch the black stone reflect the bright colours of nature around it. Next up is Tenants. This was a piece I automatically liked due to the fact that just by looking at it you can tell that it took a lot of work and talent to put together. The statement behind it also makes sense with how it was created as well. The boxes which each figure is contained in representing the ability of individual space when inside a community. Homemade was another piece I actually genuinely liked. Modern art tends to fall in one direction or another. Either it's well crafted and made with a statement that drags down the piece, or it's a strong statement with a piece that didn't seem to have too much effort put into it. But Homemade was a piece I liked the look of, and it had a good message behind it. The cake tin form of the sculpture representing the new appreciation that people have for baking after being stuck inside during quarantine. The piece designed to pay tribute to the generations who baked from scratch, using the vintage pressed tin and copper molded cake tins. Tipping Point is one I originally overlooked when I was at the exhibition, but after reading about it once I had arrived home, I realised it was actually quite a smart and creative piece. Tipping Point represents how mankind is putting so much stress on the ecosystem to the point where things are starting to change drastically. This next piece is a simple one, designed and created from pipes and fittings. It relies on the viewer to figure out the statement. The piece itself, cold, harsh, straight lines made of metal amongst organic, free-flowing trees. A Conversation Between a House and a Tree was a piece that flew right over my head when I was at the exhibition. But once I had arrived home to take a good look at the photos, I realised what I had been missing. This piece represents the contrast between man-made structure of the house and the natural tree. Next is Water Blocks. Now this piece was a favourite of mine as soon as I saw it. The sculpture itself designed to look like water did just that, and it did it well. There's no special meaning or statement behind it, just that water brings us great grace. And in my opinion, the sculpture did well at capturing that fact. This next piece, Wandoo Mantle, was one I liked as well. Made from Wandoo wood and steel, I thought it was a very well crafted piece. Most modern art sculptures lack detail these days, so seeing this at the exhibition was a welcome surprise. The sculpture itself is well done, but the statement behind it took away from its natural beauty. Finally, the obelisk. This was the only history-based sculpture I saw at the expedition, its inspiration coming from an ancient city in South Iraq. The obelisk represents the thousands of clay tablets that are located there in the first ever library in human history. Now, I don't always understand modern art, sometimes it just feels too random. But I can definitely say that I enjoyed my time at Sculptures by the Sea, and I can't wait to go back next year.